It's a cricket cockatocracy. It's an existence where the excrement that controls your life rises to the top, and it's caused by the crickets. Can I stop there? Is that enough? We got it done? Everyone understand? This is all done by our silence. I say that at the bottom of the Blogcaster page. Every week I come here to try and just expose more of the stuff, just hoping everybody finds something that they just don't like. There's just so much out there. And we're living in a life. I don't know, this wasn't anything I was promised when I was coming up, being brought up, that we would live in a world that the excrement would float to the top and actually rule over everyone, and that we would be quiet about it. And I certainly didn't appreciate what I do appreciate today, what I tell you behind the woodshed. These certain insights that I believe are more true than not, in the fact of things that we were supposed to keep, the way international law requires that we have to keep them. You know, this law is kind of an interesting thing. It's just a contract. It's just an open contract, really, of all of our history as people coming up and working and fighting amongst each other and trying to work out our differences, and we created this law. Legal's not so much different, except that it was imposed by a private party. It's actually private law. And if you look very carefully in the statutes make provision for that same private law. And so we're just living underneath someone else's private law. And I've been trying to point out to you there is other law to live, and maybe you might want to consider choosing that. I am. And so this law, however you want to define it, however you want to bring the source out, it was really, again, it answers to, it's attempting. It's our best attempt. In the general, not the special or the private, but in the general, it's the best attempt of people to overcome their fallen nature. When things don't go quite right, how do we respond? How are we going to go about when we know there's more of us coming, that there's not one in the world, it was a whole bunch of us. And we're going to have interactions and clashes. Those are the negatives. What contract are we going to agree to? So that's essentially, when you start looking at the rudiments of what we are, who we are, it gets us till today. We can't deny any of that. And I hear so many people doing that. There's just certain things, there's just certain fictions that we've created that are legitimate in some regard because we aren't pure, we aren't good. We have our fallen nature, and there's a ton of it. And so I guess I want to remind people, law it's a funny thing. It's really just, you should have it internal to you, and you hope that everyone has the same care, empathy, but that's not the reality. And I'm hoping one day we can work that out. We can become of the awareness that we just have to work more on ourselves to be more available to everybody, and not take no nonsense that we are even today. Our fallen nature is proving itself out, and what we're accepting is the new normal. Remember, that's declared by some privateer. So we have to go. We want to talk about law. It's really just these contracts that we make amongst ourselves, and even that's all a fiction. So I guess part of my point is, don't get wrapped up that you're dealing in fictions. They can be like anything. They're a tool. And we've tried to make it at least fair to everybody by saying there's an objective basis. It's written down. That's what we rely on. And that usually only comes into play when there's a problem. That we've now got a private party making all the rules that says about everything is a problem. That's our problem. And that you have allowed that to come into our world. You, not any one of you, all of us, is our problem. So this international law reflecting the fact that it's up to each one of us to deny what is not proper for us, to the extent that it's not, it doesn't also intrude on someone else. And this is the big balancing act. That's all law is. And we want an objective, so we put it in print, so it can't be changed so easily. It's really what you're looking at. You're looking at the prohibition in the United States, was the prohibition on quick changing of things. But thank you, been E-rated. I keep forgetting to do the code. BTRRLM 164, I think, is this week. BTWRLM 164 for those of you on Pastcast. And again, thank you for Vince for bringing that up so that you all listening after the fact and on the podcast can go to the blogcast. Just type in the search engine BTW today, RLM 164 to get what I'll eventually get to as my tabs, which is just the construct of this week's lesson, if you will, the logical progression of how things occurred to me as I saw them come through the notice, the news that's in our face. That's just notice of what's going on. And again, okay, we all can know what's going on, but I'm asking us, what are we going to do about it? When are we going to step up and defend ourselves in this attack? I've tried to bring, maybe not so eloquently, maybe not so orderly, these principles behind the woodshed. Bring the principles that we may not have been told. This international provision really is speaking again, loudly again to me. I told you I've come back to where I began 30 years ago, or so, roughly 30 years ago, finding myself in a law library, a university law library in front of Benedict's on Admiralty. And you go read the Benedict's on Admiralty and you read through it, and it's an encyclopedia. And you read through it, and you'll start finding your whole existence is sitting in that book to be explained to us. In fact, it was so consistent. This is just an encyclopedia on the shelf of a law library that when they got to statutory code, penal code, I'll spell it P-E-N-A-L for those of you who want to think otherwise. Penal code. And yes, it's given us the shaft, but anyway, the penal code, it was identical to the statutory code in the most part. It was identical to the penal statutory code of the states. And this was in Benedict's on Admiralty. So, to me, we're looking at a big convolution that you have to keep straight, but it's still a convolution nonetheless on the application side. That I try to bring to you these points so that you don't get lost in just discussing and over rehashing all this stuff. Don't get so lost that there's a corporation. Don't get so lost that you may even actually be an admiralty even though you're standing on the land. Go find out why that is. I'm asking you to figure out where it is you actually think you are by your best study, and then go ahead and hit it. Go after it. Because there's limitations. As soon as you found out it was a certain subject matter, I'm telling you that's the clue that there was a limitation on it. And there's limitations all over the place. The only thing there is not a limitation on is the very reason why we have the so-called law in the first place. We have criminals out there that don't regard it at all. And so when you're looking at a world that isn't regarding the law, you're looking at criminals by definition. And I don't have to put a name on them. You can. You can waste a lot of time and sleep and trolling and attack and vilification, all kinds of stuff by naming something and giving it a title thinking that you own that. Someone's going to attack you on it. It'll be a waste of your time. So why I'm asking us to not do that, I guess ultimately there's a way to cut through all that, I think. And I don't know if I would have been so certain about it had I not been able to prove it for myself on what I've learned and applied. The secret part of all this is the application. No excuse anywhere for not. Because as soon as your silence, your non-action, an appropriate action, is the silence being used against you. And I didn't make the rules about this. I'm not the criminal mind. I have a hard time actually dealing with that. I have to just figure out what I'm watching, and I have to apply what I see. And then after looking at all that I've looked at, and I have to say maybe that's part of a little bit of an advantage. Why I'm here talking, because I see so many people that don't have what I did. And you're not going to get what I did. You have to go do that. Now, I understand that, but I can at least accelerate your path if you're going to go down there, that path that you think you're going down, and I can give you the highlights, if you will. At least what I found when I went down those paths, and folks, I went down a lot of paths. I didn't know how far I've gone. But I went so many paths, it crossed jurisdictional description. And I got to so many paths, I could see there was cross paths, and those cross paths were the ones that I connected up. I held those very close to my application stage, because those cross paths get you from one jurisdiction, one authority to the next, and they're all fabricated. But ultimately, they all reflect this thing in us over time immemorial, what we call time immemorial, the time beyond man, the mind beyond man. We get these things beyond our own understanding, even beyond our own history. It's in us. That's what we know. That's what I know we know. And so it gets us back into our nature. When we're talking about natural law, that's the worst of it, I think, actually. Because there's no rules there. All you have is an agreement that you stand up for yourself, that you won't be violated. You won't become the victim that you're made. And that's what they've done to us. They've found another way to to victimize us. And I try to show you that it's not you're being victimized, but it's not as a victim. It's one being taken advantage of, and that can be flipped around. Like jujitsu maybe a bit, but more like, as I have acknowledged to it, though I've never trained in any of this, what I think is more Aikido, where you're using your opponent's momentum and weight and size and force against himself or herself. And it's there to do. And I think that's the natural thing. Wherever you have something, you have something to counter it, given it is an effect, a force in the world. So I also say don't deny forces and powers and effects and authorities. They exist. They just might not exist over you. But to the cricket, it's irrelevant. And when you have the cricket, in fact, I might call this broadcast, this certain broadcaster might be named the cricket cockatocracy. And it is just like it sounds. It's where the excrement rises to the top and rules all, because nobody stopped it. It's actually worse than just the most vile excrement. It's really a crime because it's us allowing it to, and it's the crime itself. And so I don't know what more to say, really. I wish people just understood, had an instantaneous an awareness, an instantaneous enlightenment about the extent of what I just the last few sentences what I just said there, because it for me, as I'm sitting here, I'm just thinking, that's it. I mean, you're into this without your permission and without your consent, and they're taking it away from you. What your life has become was given to you in the training and the inculcations to you, and then you were quiet on that, and then when you saw some things, you rebelled because you have an innate power in you that knows that it needs to, but then you were disempowered, and you let that be the new rule of law. So, I mean, I guess we can go around, everyone can have their opinion on how they describe it. I listen very carefully to see whether or not those opinions are accurate. And the more subtle problem is the ones that people come to the right point but by the wrong path. And the problem with that is if you go down the wrong path, you're going to build yourself your house on sand, and someone one day will be able to easily come and wash you out way, undermine your foundation because you have none. Why it's so important for you to do your own research, why it's so important in order to do what you need to do, not just be what you think you are, but do the things you need so you get that training. It's an ongoing, you're training in battle, if you will, because the war is here on us. So, crickets allow the cockatocracy, just like it sounds. It's the excrement and the stinking abyss rising to the top, and you're living in it. And you're allowing it. And the cricket will never, ever, ever stop that. So I hear lots of people talking about complaining. You can point it out. You can do all kinds of things, but until you do something about it, it's going to be here. And I'll tell you, it's still that foot race. I know it's looking bleak. I know it is bleak. I can't understand some of it myself. But there's just these subtleties that happen that say, hey, these people have a limit. These criminals do have a limit. We're kind of looking, we got something going pretty big, and like I said, I don't like to promote before we got some proof. Although it's just the way I work and go through it, I have every step is a proof for the step behind me and the one going forward, proving on a proof I've already figured out ahead of time. In other words, I don't take the path I don't know. I already know the path. I already know the destination. I just make sure I get there. I know that's a little esoteric, but and I know that's a truth in esotericism, but that's how this does work. You really have to know the end, and you just got to keep plugging away to get there day by day. Take your steps day by day. Make sure the step that you took is foundational, and the one you're going to take is just as foundational, if not better. But that's what it takes. It takes that commitment. I know lots of people don't want to do it. They want to make excuses. I'm sad to hear it. There's nothing. That's not my rule. That's not my decision. That's what we are as people. And I heard Ron Stephan earlier on 2 hours on UCY.tv right before this broadcast on UCY. He was talking about you don't own the land and all that. We would need, and I have to partly agree but partly disagree. And I've said you don't own the soil, you don't own Mother Earth. That's true. But again, applying our frailties, our foibles, our worst parts, our fallen nature, we've had to come to some agreement about how to utilize the soil, because there's it isn't utopia. A lot of people will abuse the soil. A lot of people will abuse where they are. And I don't mean that in just having your property, living in a what other people may think is a pigsty or something. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's certain production that comes from land, and there's people that will abuse that. And even worse, they'll not use that. They'll abuse it. They don't use it correctly. And so for the United States, in the wisdom of all the world coming to the United States to make it, there was some pretty intelligent people that saw how that didn't work before, that made differences in the law, everything the things that would provide our basis for being able to live together in a place in a world that we've never ever really being able to live together. And then really, and I didn't want to I'm not going to touch this too much. It's Memorial Day. Having people that would stand up to protect that. And they're not doing that now. So I'm not going to get into all that nuance. There's always a more delicate discussion that needs to be had to really flesh a lot of this out. But we were supposed to have laws in this country, United States of America, that protected people that were presumed, because we're all innocent, for doing the right thing, presumed to be using the land, not abusing the land, producing for ourselves, and making it in a way that it was workable. And we had to make peace for that. We had to make a place. So this government, again, the Declaration of Independence, the thing that you have, I put in the broadcast on Ron's discussion about the land of the free and the home of the brave. I put in it's now the land of the fee, the home of the tax home of the slave, because we didn't stay in the soil part. The reason why that is working, what you're actually claiming, in fact, may be a fiction, but it's a reality with respect to how, if you don't do this certain type of fiction, that it doesn't work. When you take this thing and you make a design in the world like it has been, it doesn't work. When you make the design in the soil and disposition and the obligations and duty that are tied to that by its proper use of the soil, to the extent that it's in productive use, not wasteful or abuse, then we found that that's better. And to do that, you have to protect those people and make peace in their place. Not the place-based stuff today, but in the place that they have, that they've purchased. What they're purchasing is the other fiction, but it's not a non-workable or impossible fiction. It's really what you have to do. You are buying the protection of the greater part of society. You're all there to have. The government protects you in that possession from trespassers. What hasn't been understood, or been hidden, is that's even against the government. And what you're dealing with is these other fictions called contracts. But they're tools. They can be worked for good or bad. And so I don't find a lot of these things the bugaboo I might have. You really have to settle down. I have to get really slow. I mean, I talk pretty fast and a lot. People laugh at me, they want to talk. Okay, it's time for me to be quiet. I know. I understand that they appreciate me, but that, I keep going. But the fact is that I start to slow down a lot when we start talking about very specific things, very particularly in the soil. And I say soil particularly because that's in our laws in the United States. It says soil disposal, not land. Land is a defined legal term. And it's the interests in land, or those things that may have encumbrances. It's not the actual soil that has the contract of exclusive possession and enjoyment. And so I want to make a distinction, and I don't know, maybe for Ron, maybe he understands, maybe it didn't come out, but yes, there's these fictions, but some of them are useful, that we have to do this in a way to keep what we have. The United States has been proven in its land disposal laws, its disposals, its contracts, whether express or implied, its recording system, most importantly for the black and white proof, evidence, ultimate proof of what's going on, the lineage, the chain of title. The abstract of title is not the chain of title, remember? That's not an abstraction. You have to render it to actual certified things of evidence that chain you to the original disposal. Think about being a slave to this, but what you're a slave to is a sovereignty of sorts, that it's a peace and settlement, that none are coming against you, not even the government, and the government's obligated by that disposal to protect you. That is being eroded, if not gone at this point. Doesn't mean it's gone permanently. It just means that we're not asserting these things against the trespasser, which is a foreign trespasser. And so we've done this for ourselves because we found out in the past it doesn't work if we don't do it this way. And so the soil gets disposed in the United States of America, and it's even against the government. It's when you get into land or definitions of land. And he made a reference, Ron made a reference to, what did he say? It was a realtor, it's a real estate. Now, real estate, I've got a little problem with it, but for the sake of the way it works, the Realtor Association is a legal entity. They're only speaking to this conditioned, less than fee simple status. I'm talking about the subtlety that's the important point, that you're not taking less than fee. You're taking fee simple, but beyond that, because your evidence says it's not only just a fee simple like you would think fee in that they've kind of attached back to Britain as a fee to as a feudal lord. You are taking the fee because they abandoned allodial titles for the evidence-based patent, which is in your constitutions as well. The letters patent, those are in the soil, and the grantor of that can't touch that anymore based on the terms of the contract of the grant. In fact, he's just stopped. Fletcher versus Peck. I think that date on that is 1901. Look that up. It's a very powerful case. Read it. Read about this. You'll see what you deal in trusts. You start seeing the whole world in a different way. And so we have this agreement amongst ourselves, supposedly in this black and white, and we use this black and white all the time to show that the people trying to trespass don't have the right. I've also pointed out to you, and other people that work with me see this, to do so in an official capacity. Trespass a property right, an interest, a remedy, or any of these things we talk about under color of an authority. And they don't make any limitation on what the color of that authority is. If it encroaches or trespasses upon your rights, remedies, property, interests, contracts, whatever, it's a felony if it's done in a color of authority. And so we get right to the proof of the law. Even the statutory revision of that respects that point, because they have to. Those privateer interlopers, foreigners that came in, the Bar Association and others, are duty bound under international law to do that. And the point is, it doesn't matter if they become criminals, because then you have at least they're given one cover. Just keep the laws as you found them. And those laws you can change over time, you get to change. If you don't expect to be saved. And there's the if you can keep it, folks. It's all right there for us to see. And so crickets create the cocostocracy that you live in today. It stinks to high heaven. It's living in it's a creation of a stinking abyss where the most powerful excrement rises to the top and chokes everybody out on top of it. This is just not a thing that crickets are able to stop. It's only the people, men and women, who are out, who can show and see themselves, in their mind, cognize that they are outside of this construct. And I'm trying to show you, as I speak through this process, how you go about doing that. I said last week, did anybody appreciate, didn't get any feedback about it. Maybe y'all knew it, and I'm just saying some stuff I thought didn't know, because I'm misinterpreting what I see on the internet and written in the chat rooms and writing in the emails and all. Maybe you knew what I said. Did you truly and fully appreciate that I said you don't have a straw man? That it's the thing that they put out there is a fraud. I hope you fully heard that last week, because when you start to see this, there's no discussion. And I'm not going to get to it. I can see already. I'm so far down the road. But there was a discussion this week came through Twitter. I think Gary L. put one link, and someone else did a link, and then someone else had got a part of that and put it up, and they're talking about what ends up being these fallacies, these arguments that they're bringing out. They're trying to show you how to identify propaganda, I think it was, and all this other thing, lies and this and that. And if you look very carefully, a lot of them are based on argument. And what have I said behind the woodshed? And why I don't do like everyone wants to, and it may have some power for people. Maybe I do it. I don't know. I never focused on it. To me right now, it's too much to deal with when I figured out another thing. I may accidentally do it. I don't know. But this trivium or quadrivium, It may help you to get back to certain things, but everyone gets lost in all those rules. And I noticed something about this documentation that was saying, here's how you expose propaganda. Folks, I do it all the time. I never refer to these fallacy things. But I deal with them. And I denounce them, and I out them, and I expose them, and I use that. If someone's trying to use that and I don't identify it as one of these fallacies, I don't identify the fallacies, show them how smart I am. I'm just working against their own integration with that to show how bad it is they're the criminal. But I looked very carefully on this list of things, and I noticed they're all dealing in argument. And what have I said behind the woodshed? I said, you don't walk into this battle as a question. You come with your evidence and you show how anybody that's trespassing you is the criminal in step one. You don't walk into an argument. If you're walking into an argument, you just like arguing. You're wasting your time. You don't understand your subject matter or. But you're not there to solve something. That's why I have trouble even anymore discussing things with people. And it's not that I don't discuss things. When someone comes to me again with a specific problem, I can talk with them, and I can we walk the path of the knowledge that they need to know, that I think they need to know. I have them check it so that my conversation that I'm talking to them over has the foundation they can recognize, that I know I've been following, that I have to tread, that I have to repeatedly tread, that I can't fall off of not even a toe, because that toe will be lopped off by those that are the bandits just off the road or just off the highway that are the path, that's the law. And I try to bring an understanding of the people that come with a specific problem, particularly in mining law, but it's extendable onto other things, with the knowledge of the overriding international imposition of us dealing with ourselves in an international way, because we're not one on the earth. We're a bunch of people independent, that we have to get along, and there has to be some objective form. Otherwise, we just use our opinions, and you see, that's our problem. You see, that's what happens in trolling. Everyone has their opinion, whether or not, and it falls into a question, doesn't it? The objective basis was to remove the questions, and I'm saying that's your clue. You come with the facts you can prove, not even a question, and for land, it's real simple. You either have title or you don't. That's why I kind of focus on that, because once we get practice in doing that, and once we realize that the land that was disposed to any one of us is by a grant, by a contract, implied or expressed, actually it's expressed or implied in the order, that even against the government, we now see the bright line. That if we can get practiced in seeing that, at least for me, it showed me this bright line in that's pretty broad, in lots and lots of other places, lots of different subject matters. And so it all comes down to that understanding. And if you find yourself having an argument where you want to show you're how eloquent and waxing eloquent about how much the trivium by being able to spew out one of the 50, 100, I don't even know what they are now, different fallacies that are an argument, you're not there to educate or move a point. You're there just to be something else. It's not going to be on your point. I have never, ever needed to get into some discussion, philosophical discussion, or some logical twists and turns, or ever had to worry about which fallacies being violated in the subject matters I talk about. I don't bring a question. I may have a question, but it's not there to be part of an argument. If you're doing that and you find yourself doing that and your intention was to accomplish something, back off, step back, and rethink what you're doing. And I don't know where you're going to exactly find the problem, but you'll find a problem that you walked yourself in. So these fallacies, they may be important to outline how, but after a while, I start, my mind just goes numb. I can see inside there's failures, there's fallacies inside the fallacies. It's just fascinating that it's really, to me, it's a cumbersome way to go. You may have to know they're there, but for me, I think for me, it seems we all have that in us. We know when someone's not a straight shooter. What's come on to us, though, is a whole bunch of people who don't have title. They don't have authority in themselves, and they come with an opinion, and you engage the opinion instead of saying, what's your title? What's your right? It's partly why I don't think I'll get into, and I don't have the time, and I don't have I'm not going to, it's like preparing for a debate. I don't have that time. I probably won't talk about too much, more than you hear me mention, And there's subtleties about this as well. I mean, it's not all absolute, but it's pretty absolute at some level about this concept of anarchy. And it's got its own meme going as well. It's all fabricated, new age to me. It doesn't fit. And I can see the fallacy in all of that. Not all of it, but I can see the fallacy enough that I know that I don't want to get into some discussion. I'm not going to answer somebody's question on a conversation that wants to talk about anarchy because I already know that it starts from a false premise. If it starts from a false premise, you're not going to be able to get to where you thought you were. It's just not going to happen. And then you're dealing in a question again. You've acceded to the authority of the false premise. Why would you do that to yourself? And so, because I'm looking at, there's not much more here to talk about, really, folks. It's not a question that we're being abused. We are being abused, and we're allowing it. And we're being the crickets that I see. And I think it's self-evident that's the case. Why? Because I'm still behind the woodshed broadcasting about that. What flashed in my mind was I'm not on the radio talking with a guest that is bringing to us their recent findings on how they've just broken the energy block. Maybe not 0 point, but more efficient. Simple systems that we could actually break the energy bind and necklace that they put on us. I would be talking about those things. I would be talking about this more substantive things that for our purpose, because we got such a long way to go. We're close, but we still got such a long way to go. I wouldn't be talking about how you protect yourself when in a world that we see people being unprotected. In a place in the United States of America where we were supposed to be so far from this. What we see, wow, what an embarrassment. And again, I don't really want to harp on this. I got a lot of friends that are veterans. I mean, and I respect everybody, not for the veteran necessarily, but for the man, for the woman they are. What are we fighting for when it's to go kill other people that they really didn't do us any good and it's outside the constraint of defending our land? We sat down and thought about that we're allowing that. I'm not free of that. Not that I wanted to get in the military, but see, in my time, they were going to throw me in the military. I was told I had a better intelligence because about the people that went in. They said, well, at least you're thinking ahead that you don't like it, and you're going to pick your best path through it. That's pretty smart. Because I didn't do that, and I got stuck over there. And so, I had a different awareness about getting in the military. But it's not like I wanted to. It was like they were going to force me in anyway. And I'm younger. That's all, like all of us, not knowing. But I was going to always pick my path if I could. And I started to find out people that would tell me mostly how. The interesting part was I started doing that, and all of a sudden the military would say that I was, they always told me I can have whatever I want. But they never really chose me, right? They just never made it happen. There was always an excuse that was outside of a constraint. That's where you start seeing it's a game. They do want fodder. They want you to walk in and do what you're going to do at their direction for the purposes of the unseen power. And so what are we defending in this country? What is this Memorial Day coming up? I have great sympathy, empathy for the people that are my friends that are veterans and what they went through. I'm just shocked at what they tell me. I can't imagine living that life and being a witness to what just carnage. It's not about that. It's not about the people that were there doing what they thought they had to do. It's the fact that we are drawn into this like it's some duty to go kill other people, and we don't. And it's the politicians that become the heroes, as I saw a video go through. The politicians become the heroes. What about that, too? Is it telling us exactly the problem? So, as I think about I'm so far off of this, but this is where I go. I have a tabs to go talk to you about stuff, but all of a sudden this pops up. I think it's as important. I don't try to just talk. I don't try to just listen to me speak. There is, as my mind's working through this, it's, these are some lessons, some observations that I've made It's not in judgment of any one of us, because we're all under it, folks. What we're also under is these people that believe themselves to be the dictators underneath colors of all kinds of titles and authorities and jurisdictions and things like that. They may exist. The question is it really over you? And when you go argue about it, aren't you already defeated? Haven't you handed the argument to somebody else? Even if it's the other guy you're arguing or the woman that you're arguing with, and we'll agree to disagree. How much time have you wasted in a situation like that? Folks, we don't have time now. You really have to have a certainty. Your spirit should be screaming. And if it does and it's frustrated and it doesn't want to act, that's the mind, that's the body now resisting what the mind tells you. It has to be done by the prodding of the spirit. You gotta overcome that apathy. I'm not talking voter apathy. I'm not talking voting here. I'm talking about action in defense of yourself. I've been listening to some people just happen to, see the videos go through. Some of them are a little bit long for me. I don't have a couple hours sometimes at all. But some are shorter. And I'm just kind of have a little smile on my face. I'm really having a hard pressed time. People that are well known get a lot more listenership than I do around the internet are now starting to use the same observations I tell you, almost the same way. I almost hear myself. In fact, I have to keep fighting the fact that say, yeah, they're listening. Well, maybe they are. Maybe you all are. And all you are that are very well listened to on the internet, thank you, and continue that message. People need to hear this. This is up to us to do. We're the victim. We put the ring in our nose. We're the victim to the crime against us. We're the accessory to the crime against us. And it's come to the point where you have to defend yourself. And that's what I was broaching to you about the conversation that we're having. Okay, how do you do that? You have the right to self-defense. You have the right to arrest a crime that you see. You have the obligation. Now, when you find out it's actually the sheriff itself, I guess I'll go neutral, itself, or the government, or an official, and there's no arrest made, now you got a little bit different perspective. How are you going to go about doing that? Because it is time for us to start learning about that and getting that field of play laid down, because as I've said, they've got the cards built in their favor. The system is built in their favor. As I've told you, I've got a couple of people, I should say a couple, and then myself, through my friend who I'm helping, we've asked the sheriff, what's your policy on private arrest? And do you know that there has not been one answered question to that? That's a big clue of what we're up against. But if you don't get in the fight to get there and get these facts documented, you start sounding like some harebrained whatever they want to title on you, and everyone looks in and believes it. See, I don't know that there's anybody that can take what I'm saying, and I don't see anybody that has. In fact, that you remember, I don't know, those of you that have followed me, you've seen him come through the phone calls on Oracle, or you see him come through the chat rooms periodically. They used to try and denounce what I said. It wasn't much of an effort because they got nothing coming, right? They got nothing in there, got nothing to bring. But they'd try. They try to subvert my message, try to subvert who I was, try to call vilification, and all y'all that knew better, you handled that. And I thank you for all that. I don't get the kind of problems lots of other people get. Maybe I'll call that on me. But the bottom line is the bottom line. And they can't deny that. And that bottom line is not supposed to trespass on people. And they can't deny that. And I can find that. I can show it. Not only can I show it by just a discussion, I can show it through our court case. I can show it for those that will pay attention. You look at the docket, which is all you'll see. If you understand what that docket list says and shows, you'll have everything in knowledge of how you go about taking these people out. The problem is they're criminals. That's why we're having the problem. Law means nothing to them. So though we've gone through time immemorial, and we'll get back to this and maybe be able to move on from here. We go through time immemorial trying to work it out amongst ourselves from our fallen nature. These people throughout the same time, the ones that we've made the rule for, don't care. They don't care about it. So the law may exist, but they don't care. They're criminals. We've come to the time we have to enforce the law. And to do that, I've found you need a record, because the mentality, the inculcation is this excrement is the power. And so you have to make a record and take the time to make the record to show that that isn't the case. They're just criminals. And I will tell you again, if you don't hear it, and I don't try to show you my voice, I'm just saying, if you don't hear it in my voice, I have no real judgment on that. I just know that's a fact. And that needs to be dealt with. In other words, it's not, if I can say personal. I don't have any thought more about someone in office that's a criminal. They're just a criminal. They need to be stopped. Let's move on. Let's put them in the proper way. Let's give them the same due process we would give any other criminal. Let's put them behind bars when we can find an intelligent jury enough to show, or do better. You let them incriminate themselves by the way you file your record. Then it's all kind of done as you get to the end, and you finally find the officer that does justice. I don't mean judges, I mean the officer that does justice. That's anybody with a decisive decision that takes up the cause that you've proven and brings justice to, or equity as they might talk about, to society. Because you're not talking about just you when you start moving. If you're smart, you're talking about those, well, let's say those similarly situated. That ends up being everybody else that's not a criminal. You'll find out when your best, most powerful remedies are those you speak for others and not as a story, but as a fact. In fact, all the extraordinary remedies require you speak for those others similarly situated, the larger society. There's an altruism in this as well. And so you start taking all this on, you start presenting it that way, you learn to present it like that. It makes it very hard for you to be the outlier, or the liar, whether it's out or not, liar. It makes it very hard for someone to vilify you. They end up showing themselves to be the criminal. If you are calm about that and realize where you're at and not make it an argument. Don't get it into a place where they can start using it. Just recognize they're using all those fallacies and turn it jujitsu on them. Go Aikido all over them. If I use that position all over them, expose that. You don't expound on it. You just expose it by some other proof that buries them even farther. You keep them in the stinking abyss as you stand on the edge and keep heaping great quantities of authority, real authority on them. So to me, really, I wish I could just give you all what I know. That would be the time that we would have a discussion. When you had all the stuff I had, and we could look at this thing and say, okay, because I do this with people, or even, I have my study, they have theirs, and we get together. Our conversations are totally different. I don't have the trolling. We don't have the trolling. It's a lighthearted discussion. It's serious. And yeah, you get into that part, but at times you break off and it gets lighthearted about how you discuss these criminals. And then you get back into the nuances and you work it out, but you're working out within the constraint of the objective basis that anybody can see if you just go read it, that no one can deny when you present it, that the only one denying it is a criminal. It's really simple, actually, that you all know, I just wish we had all my knowledge and somebody I'd like to hear it. We wouldn't, it'd be like we wouldn't have to talk, actually. The only talking we do once we start to know is how we're going to expose the criminal. Where are they? Root them out. There's just not enough of us doing that. And there's a lot of us with bad experiences about doing that. And I think a lot of that, and this is not a perfect silver bullet for sure, but we've been doing it wrong, and that's why they've been taking advantage. They'll take advantage of you all the time. In fact, in one of the articles I was talking about, it was exposed, they talk about creating gray areas. One of the responses we got by the sheriff, his first response, talked to gray. He actually used the term. Okay. I didn't go down the trivium or quadrivium fallacy list. I said, you just made a gray area you don't have title to make. You created a gray area, created a new jurisdiction you don't have authority in. That makes you a trespasser to that and to me. We just laid out what the effect of him utilizing that point was. I didn't go off on, you just made a fallacy in this regard, it's this way, and forget all that. It's a waste of time. Just point out what they're doing, use what they've done against themselves. What have I just done? I've got away from trying to use the tool of the education. I'm actually using the tool without even using it. It's just part of me. I've not researched the trivium. If that makes me less in people's eyes, well, I'd have at it. I come here a different way. I don't say it's wrong. What I'm saying is that it's not the end-all be-all. It's just a thing that gets your awareness in the proper focus. Once you learn it, it takes the back seat to actually taking action. I hear people go through all these fallacies. It tires me out. I don't care. Fine. Now what are you going to do with it? Now that you're so smart, you outed someone for being a troll. What are you going to do about it? The problem for me is, why are you even talking to that one? Forget it. You're in the wrong space to start with. You started in the premise. You let him get you. You let him talk about stuff. It's irrelevant. And yes, I'm a little focused on maybe getting stuff done that I see needs to be done. So I'm a lot less talkative about that side. Does it mean I don't talk about things? No. In the chat room, at RLM chat, we're talking about the music that Grimner was playing, and he was playing Beatles, and how that was, what that was about. We talk about that. It's not all focused on certain things. But when you're going to start getting into any time investment, check yourself. Is it just because you want to be looking like you can outdo somebody in a chat room, or is it because it's going to bring you some knowledge, or is it just going to show everybody else how trollish you can be on your point, as right as it might be? That's not helping us. None of that's helping us. It's going to be crickets. Again, it's proper action, not just any action, not defending your position, not defending your lesson ability. Folks, I always check myself on whether or not I learned what I learned correctly. It's the biggest concern I have. And concern didn't mean business, even though that's legal. I make it my business to try and make sure I'm not making mistakes. That's just on me anyway. I don't get wrapped up in the perfection of that, but I'm just always checking. It's just what you do. So I don't have time for people that want to question me. Not in the general, for sure. Tactically, strategically, yeah, but then there's a whole lot of facts that come with that discussion, and it's a private discussion. It's not in a general application. It's not something you got off of YouTube. It's not what someone believes or wrongly what the situation is. And I cringe a bit when I hear my friends that I talk to that listen to me using the wrong phraseology. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it shows that there's a lack of connection of how the hierarchy of authorities have been that would put you in the right path and keep you there. If you talk about land and don't understand there's a constraint around that, and think that's the focus and the only thing that goes on about soil, then you're going to remove the ability for the soil and the laws around that, and what we've agreed that would happen to make us different in the world of the United States of America about the soil, and why we have the right to say we own it. We're owned to the extent of our servitude to it as well. Don't forget that. But there's no one that can displace us. And I hesitate here for people to, in their mind, say, well, what about the Fifth Amendment? Well, yeah, that might sit there, but if I hesitate to let you ask that question of yourself, what about that takings bit? It's there, but I've told you that's also has to be conditioned. It's not a universal, we want it, we get to take it. They have to come up against the public use and beneficial use. And if you know that, they can't just come and get your stuff. Why? Because they're part of the grantor or the trustee that was supposed to be protecting the grantor's trust. They're a trustee, they're not a sovereign. And yes, they can take under the law, and I don't like that. That was one of the other weaknesses. But they really do have a standard. And that standard is up to you to hold them to. And that's why I focus again on the mining law for the United States of America. You have exclusive right of possession and use. I'm just going through this. You attach this to all land, but I'm talking minerals. Exclusive, even against the United States when perfected by the first filing with the county, which is the record you make for the evidence of the title that you have, which has to be done right as well. It's all really lawful. It's all contract. You're declaring the title by you making the location notice. That is against the United States itself as a trustee. The state has to pick up that trust in its agreement underneath the enabling acts or admissions acts in Oregon. There's two different ones. Oregon's got a different name for the same thing. These are trust obligations, not sovereignties. And the obligation is to keep you in peace. That's what the sheriff's job is all about. This lays out pretty quick and pretty simple. Anybody coming in the government that comes against that is a breach of contract to begin with, but also a breach of trust. As I've told you, there's multiple layers of violation here. When I write a document, I have to remember to write at least 3. There's actually 4 or 5. It depends how deep it goes. There's 3 violations in law for a government official to come against a property that's disposed to you by contract, which I'm talking disposable land by the law. But those records that are made are supposed to be protected by the courts when someone comes against you to trespass. And you don't stand on all these laws. You stand on that contract. What is it? What's the limits? They call the 4 corners is that patent document, or in this case for minors, it's that location notice. That's describing the land. Yes, you use a name. You give the claim a name. Yes, it's a fiction. But you describe it. You lay it out. It desegregates itself from the common. Why? Because it's pursuant to a grant. It's a servitude to go to work and make a livelihood. And as long as you do, if you will, it's a reward. It's an unfettered reward in what they call in the United States, what used to be acknowledged as a lodial or held in a lodium. It's now fee simple. What you'll notice is land is defined also as real property, not real estate, but real property, and it's less than fee simple. That's a benefit taken by the government, not as a trustee. So you got to go kind of slow here, but I don't want to, in the most part, you're getting beat down, so you're being treated under the fictions in the wrong way. Or you've allowed the fictions to be treated upon you that you're not throwing off to correct the record, which a criminal will try not to recognize. But you just stick it in the record anyway, and you go after them. Then you go after them as criminals. You don't go after them in defense like someone else is legitimately has another claim, let's say a property line dispute. These are all different standards of approach of the remedy that's available. Different standards of rights that come with all this. And you have to go slow when you come here to discuss a lot of this. Now, I slow down. I have to listen very carefully. And I ask some questions that kind of irritate some people. I want to know something. I need to know certain pieces of information for me to be able to look at a problem. And it invariably is always the right to the property you're talking. And this can extend now to any property. That's why like a bill of sale is so darn important. That's just another example of what they do for soil disposal to create this possession that's exclusive to you. And under the mining law, it's there because the dominant estate is mineral and the minerals are where they are. And if you don't do that, then another use can come over the top of it and bury that use if we didn't do it this way. I don't like the splitting of the estates, but it's been prudent because we're of a fallen nature. When they gave land in 55 to all minerals, the common mineral materials, do you know people just didn't go mine? They just didn't even go claim the land for the sand or the rocks that they could have if they would have been able to. No, they went on and made these claims and stole timber. That wasn't the grant. You could use the timber for the mining, but you weren't supposed to go and use it for the sake of taking the timber off. And because they did that after 1947, when that was finally granted into disposal, in 1955 they changed the law that says, no, you folks under common minerals, you can't take the surface because you're stealing it. You're not using it for the intention, the good use that we need, the beneficial use, the public use that we need to dispose of soil for. So there's a logic about all this. If we get back to the basics of it and don't just throw it out, what you're seeing is a violation to all this. And then it makes it very difficult. And I see this all the time. There's people that just dislike me to no end. They just say, I don't know what I'm talking about. And yet everything they do is wrong. And they'll continue going and doing it wrong. Not many, will settle down and just look at what I'm actually saying. They'll look at what they think that I'm saying and or what they think they know without the foundation. And as I've told you, I've intimated a couple times, I get emails or phone calls when I can slow down with someone and say, okay, this is what we got to, this is what I need to know this from you, and this is, okay, then they tell me something, and I say, okay, that means this, and this is the law you go to, and I get the dialogue going, and on the steps that are taken, we find out very quickly there was a lot of missteps and misunderstanding. But what I say that I know to do, that people don't hear me. So I'm talking to those of you that are hearing, or listening, maybe not quite hearing completely. And I'm not saying all of you don't, because I know, I can tell by what you're doing that you're working, I have to appreciate a lot of you that are. I can just see it. You're working real hard to get this thing that was done to us wrong corrected. I don't know about right, but at least corrected. I don't know if there's a better answer yet, because we haven't got to the answer we're promised. And which is promised not in a promise, but really it's in function if we would do it, that some usurpers came in, and I just identified the Bar Association as one group. Since they've overthrown all your laws, all the permanent laws of the people were literally supplanted under national laws, overthrown in 1953. You haven't existed, for all the most part of you all that have been living, even as youngsters or being born just before 53, you've never ever known the world without a private Bar Association usurpation. You don't even know what it is. You don't even know what was expected of us. All I'm doing is remembering, being able to reach back in the objective basis, all that black and white that goes before all that, and say, hey, wait a minute now, you guys, you usurpers that came in, that took over this land, that overthrew the permanent laws of the people, you've been forcing a bad position, and I'm going to call that out now. Why? Not because it's my opinion, because it said so in some people that weren't of the age of being overthrown. They weren't in the age of oppression or repression or whatever you want to call this thing. This, now what we see, we can say cockatocracy. Which I have to say, Ron reminded us of the word. I told you that. He reminded me that word was there. I forgot all about that one. But it's completely consistent. What I've come through and saw, when I saw that's the way it could be, I realized, yeah, you're dealing in the way that word sounds. That's the kind of government that word sounds. You are living in a world of excrement as rulers. Everybody from Bush before, 10 years before 1950, anybody had no capacity before 1953 by law, by probably 18 years before 1953, has never experienced even the servitude after 33, but has never experienced the world in a proper way, the way it was supposed to be. And then that's been a gradated encroachment on top of that, because they didn't want to make it too obvious. It wasn't obvious enough when they told you that they supplanted your laws. That wasn't obvious enough, I guess. But they came even slower, but they told us right up front. So, let's get back to the law of the land. The disposal side, and the law of the land is actually disposal of soil. Let's make that clarity. And the land has been defined as water. Remember this one. So if you don't think you're in Admiralty all the time, go look at the land is defined as water. Soil hasn't been defined as that. That brings up like the movie Waterworld just flashed in my mind. Think about that one. That was a pretty important movie, even though it was long and kind of boring. Where'd you get that soil? I won't tell you. Everyone else lived under Admiralty. Anyway, let's move over to the soil. So you look at these definitions and you start to see there was conventions, can I say? Those are even contractual, treaty. Conventions that are made for us to be able to work on the land, the soil, for its best use, because if we didn't have that in all of history, we didn't have the protection. And if we don't have the protection, we don't invest time in the land. Miners even didn't do that. That's why the mining law came into being. Miners would go, like you heard, the gold rush. The gold rush only hit all the gold that was easy to take out as quickly as the miner could go through and take it out. And the Congress looked at that and said, wow, that's just stripping the top. There's so much more mineral. In fact, the mining law starts out as an inferior mineral law because it doesn't declare all the valuable minerals that they find out a few years later they needed to point out that miners could have gotten. So this quick flash fire over the land for the first minerals was not the best use. They had to settle miners down and say, okay, as a reward, we'll go ahead and settle you down if you claim it and do the work of getting the mineral. Go deeper now. Take the time it takes to find the mineral, and we'll give you the land, and our laws will protect you to do that. That's why mining districts were set up, because they protected the miner sometimes down to 10 feet. As long as he did what he was said to do about keeping the claim, to keep the claim, to show he was there and working the claim, the district was the government that protected him to do that. It's really all we're talking about in this land stuff. So when you say you own land, what you're doing is you're owning the right to claim exclusive beneficial use of the spot that's described. Yes, you're not actually owning the land. But we as people have had to produce from the land, and we found that we needed minerals from the land, and that's the underlying support for why that's an idea even. Otherwise, you're right. I mean, what do you do? You don't have any possession. Someone just comes along and takes, or you get a band of people, a tribe of people that protects you to go to your little cattail patch or your yew bark collection stud, or your oats and hay that you find in the field, and you go back to that life. No, with an expectation that you may not be able to go back there tomorrow. And so I just wanted to make a little bit of clarity on what Ron was saying. Yes, there's a truth about what he's saying, but there's another side. I want people to see this side. I want people to work from that part. And I only say that because since I've been focusing on that, it's really brought a lot of clarity, and it's cut through the problem. It doesn't allow the conversation, the question that someone can even use these fallacies on you. That's the key right there, I guess, is what I should have said I didn't say before. When you're not in the question, a fallacy cannot be used on you. You identify the criminal immediately in its use. So it's not even a question, right? There's never a question here. Black and white's as clear as it can be. Yeah, they've made word study, definitional changes, but there was an intent behind all that, and that's where it settles down in the land. What was the intent? And people that would vilify me missed a recent court case where the state came in on the moratorium we enjoined, but they're now, other miners are trying to refight it out. They're walking in and they're talking nonsense through an attorney who's talking nonsense, and the state came in response to their nonsense talking and said, we're not even regulating y'all. And nobody heard that. Nobody heard the fact that the state admitted what we had said 2 years ago, that they can't do what we're doing, but they may be able to do what they said in the law, and we're not that. Even though the state is threatening beating the war drums over taking out all miners. The law is clear. They can't touch us anyway. But we have miners that won't listen to me, going through attorneys that won't listen to me, going to argue a wrong position. They heard in court that the lawsuit they have is really frivolous compared to what the state's intending to do. It doesn't pertain there. What they do doesn't pertain to the law. And we've identified that back in 2013. But we said we didn't sue just the one law. We said you have a system of plunder going on that we're enjoining. So our lawsuit, if you look inside our docket, because that's all you're going to get, they've hidden all the files, explains to you what we filed. You'll just see the list of things we filed, and you think about what those tools would have done in law, why they were even filed, and what they might have said, and you'll see what happened in that case, and you'll see what is going on. And behind the scenes, we're talking with the governor saying, you're going to have to show cause how you're not committing treason here on this. The next thing we know, we hear the state saying, well, but we're not stopping the miner. And nobody here heard that. So here we even got the state admitting to certain things in court, and yet no one wants to listen to that. This is our problem in this country. We're not really hearing what we're listening to, or listening to what we're hearing to. I don't know. What is that? We're just not paying attention. So functionally, we're crickets. We allow the cockatocracy. Cockatocracy is how it's pronounced. Even though there's a little I in there. Cockatocracy. We have allowed, it's where you allow the excrement to rise to the top and the rulers that you've allowed. The problem is you got in. You got into the septic and you let that be the rule. You didn't crawl out and clean yourself off and keep some purity in yourself. And that's all I'm asking you, and I'm just using the disposition of soil point to prove that out. And that just gives us the model to look at on how you keep exclusive other things that are other types of property. And then that gets to you. Are you the human resource? Do you know about property law, or are you the property that they talk about? Oh, you can feed into it. You could say, oh, you're a straw man and you're the trustee under the straw man. You can agree to all that. It's not the truth. Trusts are fictions, but they're trusts for fictions for a tool, for a good reason. That's what I told you earlier, the trust that's established in the disposition of soil that's extended to the states is the one that they have to protect in you. That's a fiction. But it's a fiction of order that supports a good purpose. When I say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is exactly what I'm talking about. So we have encroachers coming in, and there's many different styles. They all seem to have this military consequence to them. So I kind of bundle them in there, although I don't keep them tied too tight. Again, their costumes can alter, and they can be a little different than what you see. They may still have the same source and not telling it to you. My point is, I don't care what they are. I don't care I even name them. All I know is, are you trespassing the law, the objective basis? Do you have title to what you've done? And when I see a law that says that no official act can come contrary to the law, and if you do and affect someone, that's a felony, I'm going to go there, folks. I'm going to identify how they done it was wrong. When I do that, I got them in an official capacity, and it was something I could show property title or an interest title to. I'm going to call out the felony. I'm going to attempt then to arrest it by the system. They're going to prove they can't, or they're a part and party to that, and they're part of the organized criminal syndicate, and I'm going to get them on the list. This ultimately comes down to us, and that's where this is going to go. And we're walking slow into that one. Again, as I've been told by a former sheriff on a YouTube that we dealt with, who didn't tell me this, but on the YouTube talking to other people, he said, he said this after we asked about it, you better get an agreement. You need to do the private arrest, but before you do that, you better get an agreement with the sheriff on how that's going to happen. I had to smile, folks, because I just anticipated that problem, and this guy who was in the office told me that and backed that up. I'm telling you that. This is not quite the simple idea when you have you have a military organized, well-oiled machine infiltrating every aspect. It's not so easy to get back to your entitlements, your rights, your privileges, your immunities, all that stuff, because they're a criminal. And as long as you don't defend yourself from it, it rules your life. And you can sit there and complain and cry and give every excuse you want. The reality at the end of the day is you're a servant to that, a slave to it, a prisoner to it, a victim of it, whatever. You can go ahead and agree. You have the power to stand up, but you're not, and I don't know more to say about that. That's not my decision either, is it? I'm asking for better for you, for us all, also. I mean, they didn't make it easy, and they beat us down hard, and so you get, once bitten, twice shy, or thrice shy, big time on something like this. They have the ability now to destroy us. That's an embarrassment to us, folks. There's nothing about this analysis that says we have the ability to stop if we ever thought there was something for us in this place. And we have the evidence that it was at least intended in that direction, with the caveat, if you can keep it. And we never plugged that hole. And they made good their threat, folks, is all I can tell you. Am I get angry about that? I'm a little frustrated, but do I get angry? Do I get emotional? Man, no, that's the fact. That's the fact, Jack, Jane, Alvin, Elvis, Steve, Michael, Vince. It's all of us. They got over on us. They did it. And it was written that they'd do it. Are we going to step up and stop it? I had to go to an objective basis. Soil disposal looked like one of the better ones. It's such a high gravity law. I don't know, folks. It's just treaty level stuff. That's international law, folks. It's all there. It's us, again, getting back. I'm still not on the tabs, am I? I spent hours to put these tabs together. I got so many tabs, I'll never get to them. In fact, I'm just wondering, what do I do now? Just erase all the work I put to put the tabs up and never get to them and just throw all that work away? I've been trying to get back through it here another hour, and I haven't even got to the tabs yet. I'm, I guess, assuming this is a lot of important stuff coming out right now. That it doesn't really matter about the news that some of them notice. I've told you that. We can go through that all the time. But this substance, the material substance of what I'm saying has to be understood. Yes, stand under it. Okay, everyone makes a big deal about it. Yes, you have to stand under something. Stand under the principles. Understand how they work. The principles don't work. They work, folks. They're not sitting silent somewhere. It doesn't mean we have to become all vicious. Like I say, I'm not taking a big negative emotion. Yeah, I don't like it, but I don't drive and I understand the position of getting angry. Yeah, I get that. But to me, I think there's a lot of emotions you got to get beyond, and you use those behind you to find the greater harm than the emotion that has to be made right. And you take all that and you start applying it. You allow it to focus you. And I do this periodically. It's not like I don't get angry, I don't get frustrated, I don't get, you want to strangle something. I do all that, but it's only temporary. And what I have to do is say, okay, what are you going to do about it? What I say? What are you going to do about it? Not D-U-E as a debtor. No, D-O. No, and don't back it up with another one. Start squatting like a dog. That don't work either. You got to do proper. All this language is there to mess us around and show us, and also show us the clarity. It's right there for us to do correctly, and we're not. And I just, at some point I say that, and what come flash right through my mind, and so stop talking because no one's listening. No, that's not the truth, but in bulk, you look across this nation, and you just got to go, wow. I mean, at one level I laugh, but we are some screwed up people. And guess what? That's a reflection of time immemorial, man against man, women against women, women against men, Peshmerga against the is. I mean, this is us. You can't deny this in us. So we do that in our own place. We do that local. I say go and fight local. We do that local. That's a negative that we have to overcome. We were supposed to do that with our records of objective basis that no one can actually deny, and you don't go into the statutory side necessarily. That gives you remedies or things that are available, and then the states abuse that. That's another adulteration. But for us, we just say, let's say the miner, it says in the black and white that no one should interfere with the mining or access to a mining claim. That's a misdemeanor. That's an objective basis that everyone's to know if they didn't know before. It's printed that when that happens, it's a crime. If you don't have it printed, then we get kind of fuzzy, don't we? That's why all this stuff exists, is a breach to somebody's property rights for the most part. Not the license side, not the commerce side. It's a whole different discussion. I don't even know that that's correct as well in some parts. So, like I said, you got to slow down when we get there. We aren't even there. I'm trying to show you there's a production side tied to the land that we call the land. It's the soil. It's based in treaty-powered law. It's based in obligations and duties of what we call the sovereign as a trustee, not the sovereign. The sovereign did its job in the disposal. It sits there now as the protector of the title it conveyed underneath its obligation to do so as a treaty. So stop with the nonsense of talking about deeds and the land as far as it's been redefined as water and essentially state interests or commerce property that's less than the patent authority that underpins it. Remember, the patent isn't anything more than the ultimate evidence. You understand what I said there? It's the ultimate evidence in a system that's supposed to have courts that recognize that as the law. That's the law of the land. It's described in black and white, and you stick to it. You have to. You get nothing more than what's written, and you get anything that's applied. Even though you get nothing by implication, you get anything that is implied in the intention of the conveyance, in the disposal. You don't sell them. You don't stick them on the market. These are grant authorities. You become the grantor. You don't become the salesman. You don't warrant the property. You don't stick it in a system. You can, but as the underlying power doesn't, it can't be affected. And when you understand these things, there's a whole other analysis that goes on that clarifies a lot of the nonsense that have been put on us that says that we need to know different, or we're supposed to know different, and that's the way it is. Because we go question these people with these real authorities, the power in the law, the power in the contract, and these so-called authorita that rule your life can't answer. They turn cricket. This is what I tell you what's happening. It's becoming more of a joke. Folks, when I've been doing this paperwork, and we make that record, and we bring the law, and we don't get expounding on it, we just strictly speak to the violation, and we speak to the authorities that they were obligated to, they don't answer. They can't open that can. They're finding themselves, they open a can of whoop-ass in the room. They're by themselves in the room. They're about to open a can of whoop-ass in. What do you think they know is going to happen? They're not going to open that can. They don't answer you. Because if they do, that can gets open and they're the only one standing in that room. And they'll be like Edna, if you've seen that picture. Edna opened up a can in the whoop-ass in the kitchen when she was all by herself. She sprawled out on the ground pretty quick. They know, folks. This is what shows you more criminality. And so we push that direction. Do I understand, yes, do we not ultimately own the land? We don't own the earth, yes, but because it just happens to be we're so not good to ourselves. We've had to make rules for ourselves so that we can at least use the land and have an expectation to use the land with some objective basis for time. And in the patent evidence, it says forever. Again, forever as long as the United States stands, right? Not as the criminal it's become or been overrun, as it was intended, at least as we can conceive, because we weren't there either. And notwithstanding, I understand that absolutely he's my mentor at some level, never met him. Lysander Spooner, there's no contract with us in that Constitution. Yes, there is not. But we have an expectation of how these people that take oaths to it to operate. And that is not as a sovereign when it gets to the soil. That's completely an obligation. A duty and obligation. There's both. So if we can look at that, start constraining our thoughts to that point and being able to prove it for ourselves, and then being able to constrain our dialogue with anybody else who wants to say otherwise and disprove what you already know is black and white. That's a simple discussion of proving out the black and white and that they don't know it, that they're misapplying it, that they're attempting to be a criminal because they are threatening you with it. You're supposed to be in peace and settlement. You aren't even supposed to suffer the encroachment of someone causing the question unless they have a right to do so. Trespass doesn't require intent either, folks. It requires no criminal element, no knowledge or intent, no will. It just happens. It can happen immediately. And we were supposed to be grown up and respect that in us for others as well. When something happens that's not your property, you either take care of it or you watch over it or you go find the one who it may be owned. There's even who owns it, who it really it's possessed by at the time that their right, their title and interest says they have the right, that you've interfered with it. You are supposed to be respectful enough to deal with that, deal with your responsibility. We're supposed to be built inbred with that. See, they're supposed to be in us. That's our better nature. We don't need to resort to law. It's when you don't that the other party gets to say, hey, he was a trespasser, damaged a fence and didn't have the right to. Stole my stuff, didn't have a right to. See, folks, when you find something, there's even rules for how you turn it back into the state. It's supposed to be protecting the property of someone else. You find something on the ground somewhere, and let's say it's usable, and it doesn't look like it's been abandoned. It's been maybe abandoned or something, and maybe it's a knapsack and it's not a bomb. Maybe we get back to that. Maybe it's just some stuff that got left behind. You know, there's a rule, probably I think it's there in every state. You're supposed to take it to someone of a law officer and say, I found this. They're supposed to take a report, and they then leave it for so many days, maybe 90 days or something like that, 6 months. I don't know. It matters. That's statutory. That's the people of the area have defined for their area what the statutory time of retention by the state is. It might be forever. I don't know. It depends on the state. What they say is a protection under statutory terms, what the expectation of everybody is over your property. And if it's not claimed in that time of property, you have the right as the finder. This is like treasure, folks. As the finder to make a claim for it. The government's not supposed to take it and keep it either. But so there's all this stuff. So if you didn't have that, there wouldn't be that orderly knowledge of what's to be expected for the property. Because there's also theories that I don't hear anybody talking about. There's a theories of best use for everything, actually. And these statutory things, these fictions, these statutory tools are brought so that something doesn't sit and decay if it can be used where the property owner may have abandoned it and didn't say anything to anybody. So something doesn't get wasted in that. The state is to oversee that in a neutral fashion. You see the adulteration to that, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm trying to explain the principle underlying what we have come from to and how we've resolved the problems amongst ourselves, and they turn out to be what we call law or even statute or even codes. The black and white can't be denied that way. Now, you bring in a question, and maybe they'll give their agent called a judge the right of termination. Let's not go into that gray area. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you have title, you can prove it, someone trespassed it, and in this case, for the most part, it's an official, which means if it was wrongly interfered with, it's a felony. Now we're just dealing with a criminal. And if you got that in your mind, you look out in the world, we are not very respectful to each other at all. And in a way, I'm glad now to see what I could see as a memorializing, remembering this mining law as a property law to see, wow, how do we treat property? Because I'm so screwed up, I wouldn't have a clue without its guidance. In learning about it, I've learned about all kinds of things that I would have never, ever, ever thought was involved. As the status of the disposal being treaty level, the status of the status of the parties involved being sovereign in the disposal, but not as the trustee. The accepting sovereign that's not a sovereign but a trustee, but the sovereign to be the trustee. But they can't deal with you as a sovereign at that level. Why? Because you have exclusive possession and enjoyment forever against all comers in the world. And that's proven by your title somewhere, someplace in a written form. It's why the statutes do not like oral contracts. It's real hard for someone, even an objective basis, to say what your statement was if it's not printed, if it's not memorialized in writing. All evidence is reduced to writing, folks. So there's a rule for that. There's a good reason why it's there. What we're looking at is the treatment by usurpers over these things, who do not regard property. We sued, that's what we're suing about. They're literally committing treason. It's not just a trespass without intent. No, this is treason. It makes war on your laws. And those laws are meant to be the objective basis of how we're going to keep peace amongst us, and so you keep the laws. Whatever you might call them. So, I went way off this. I got another 20, 30 tabs, and we're not going to get to here. What do I do, folks? There's so much to talk about, so much out there. Maybe I did good today. Maybe you understand more of the context of what we're talking about here. I'm telling you, it's in your hands, folks. It's right here. It's in us. There's no doubt in my mind. It's in us. It's in us immediately. And I say get involved because I want help. I just see this thing as such a great deal. We get back. Again, does it solve our problems? No, we have everyday life to live, all that stuff. But at least we start understanding the distinctions. We rebuild the chasm between us and that government that was supposed to serve us. We put it in the proper relationships. We have the proper understanding again, not the one we were told about. And it's like having a 6-shooter in the West. I mean, it just brought peace. There was something about the threat of being someone be able to defend themselves that brought peace to everybody. A certain respect happens. Does anyone really intend to hurt anybody? No, but that's because of who we are. We apparently need that reminder. And that's all some of this, particularly the soil disposal law is. It's that reminder in writing of who can do what and how. And when you get to the patent where it's disposed land, disposed soil, not many exclusive possession and enjoyment. It's pretty exclusive to all the world. That includes whether or not you consider the government something or an entity or a fiction or whatever, a corporation or not, against all the world. All and forever are pretty large words. And that's being destroyed in us, and you see the destruction of our peoples in all places when that is not respected. I guess that's the clearest thing I can tell you. Why, it's all a reflection to me. It's all this carnival mirror of the world, destroying what the United States was different, that made it better than any other place. Not to be patriotic, flag-waving, rah-rah about the United States of America, but that is something to be pretty patriotic about that we finally established in its best sense governments that had service to the property possessors, and that property was important, and that you would understand that sufficient that you wouldn't become property. What's the first thing they did? They made you a beast of burden. They stuck you into servitudes that they get you to buy into by whatever way, and then you become the human resource. I don't know what more can I say, folks. We got to stop. We either intend to stop that or we don't. No, excuse me, I said that wrong. You either stop it or you don't. Forget the intention. Stop thinking about it, folks. I got to get this all the time. Yeah, you got to think about something, but do it with the purpose to go take action. Take action. We're in misposition here. I think I can finally get over to it. There's this big collusion going on. I just look at it's a big criminal syndicate. Organized crime, you all listen to me say, yeah, we see the criminality. Yeah, okay, fine. No, I'm talking about actually beyond identifying it to actually becoming positioned and creating the evidence and taking the steps to out it and then arrest it. That's the ongoing process. That there's only a few people I know of that are really doing it correctly. I see lots of misinformation. In fact, I was offered a video to watch, and I can't remember now what it was. I really can't remember. I wish I could because it's important. But I didn't even get 3 or 4 minutes in. All the statements that were made sounded plausible. They sounded pretty good. But when you apply the foundation to it, they were not actually accurate. And that's how the conversation starts. See, when I get to there, I really don't have much more time to be kind of going down. The premise is wrong. How are we getting to the truth? That you get to the truth becomes an accident, even though it may be the truth. But that can be washed out pretty quickly in the future if you get really challenged. But it took after 3 minutes of multiple errors, misinterpretations, misstatements, and good, clear misstatements that I hear repeated by lots of other people as well, I guess is the point. And all it takes is being able to read the black and white that's available, even for the corporation called the United States, and see that it isn't applied the way it's even stated by these people in the videos. So again, you have to be very careful on what you're doing. Well, I say you need to really do the footwork here. It's your race. It's your job to protect yourself. But there was a structure, a framework that we were allowed to utilize, and it was supposed to be available to us that has been blocked to us. And we can identify at least one group of people and quite a few others, and an external imposition. See, remember, the Bar Association isn't just domesticated, it's foreign and domesticated, and then they inverted that. That's why it looks like the whole thing's upside down. So there's just a bunch of privateers and plunderers. See, I don't even know if there's a name for it, it's just crime. We can talk philosophy all we want and go, oh, we got this, we can define it this, and whoa, it's corporatocracy, what was it? I think Meisterbrow in the RLM chat room, I can't remember what it was, I don't remember the combination. Is it capitalist development or something, and whatever. I said, no, it's just organized crime. You give it a name, but it's just organized crime. We can continue giving it a name and thinking it's something, but it's just organized crime. So as long as we think we can identify it, just to put a pin on it, we're missing the fact that it's just organized crime. I don't care what philosophy you put on it. If it's creating a condition that's stealing your stuff, it's a crime. It doesn't even have to intend to. It's a trespass. That can be a crime, although it's not viewed in most places without intention to be a crime. But it's not. It's a disrespect in the least. Why are you allowing the disrespect? It must be in us. You, me, everybody else. Wherever we allow the disrespect has to be our victimization, our abuse, and we're embracing the abuser. Or the psychologist, I forgot to look that up. You eventually start to embrace your abuser. Why do we do that? Those that collude around us, we continue to allow without focusing on what's going on. We surface on surface, just acknowledge its existence without working out to take action. And maybe not everybody everywhere, but someone has to find some of this important. Emails show TPP collusion between big banks and Obama administration. We'll all go, yeah, we predicted all that. Yeah, but here's the evidence, folks. We're talking about evidence. We're talking about take the law in your own hands because the government has become the criminal, and you need the evidence to be able to go execute the law. Not the people, the law. Bring them into accountability. That's sorely missing in this country at this point. And I know I got the proof. I know, folks. It's not over. We're still pushing it. but I got the proof, so I'm sitting a little bit more confirmed in my, if it was opinion, now it's fact, evidence, fact, witness, it's conviction, it's their confession, folks. It's how you set the record. Emails obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, there's a tool, shows the U.S. Trade Representative Michael Froman discussing TPP with Goldman Sachs lobbyists. Actually, reading the surface of that, I don't know the importance of all that. But you start knowing about the way this thing works out, you know that there are insiders, right? It's an inside job. There's the proof. We don't have it anywhere else. We have it here. Some of you can pick this up, figure out how this affected you, bring this into importance for you, give yourself the so-called standing to go after this. Here's the starting. They actually give you the series of emails. You'll get this in the Blogcaster. There's probably not going to be many tabs in the Blogcaster this week, but this will be one. It's a PDF you can get. You can see what they talk about, how they do it, who's done it. You can then take that method and you could probably apply it to your own state, even your county. Someone's talking to someone behind the scenes. It's the good old boys. Maybe not this subject because that's a federal thing, but maybe local subjects. You got the clue. You got the eye to see. You're looking for, it's like the camouflage they put up. You're looking for the anomaly that's very hard to see. That's what you're looking for. Here, we got more than an anomaly. We got to prove. It's an inside job. We knew it. I told you. Why? Because it's all bottom line, folks. This is in the commercial worst sense, the political sense. That's why politicians are heroes, and the ones that go to are fodder. What Kissinger said, I think I put this in a tweet behind Woodshed is the account. I quoted Woodward quoting Kissinger about the military man being nothing but a dumb animal used for foreign policy. That's the absolute truth, folks. What's to be a hero in that? And the video that I just saw that passed around, is going around, that shows that the politicians are the hero and the veteran gets beat down. Look at the abuse. As a veteran, how can you not take that as a clue? That all this other stuff about the promotion of the one day they give you is a slap in your face. And I feel bad. I mean, I've got some really good friends, very veteran, beautiful people. They got sucked in like it. Somehow I avoided. I don't know how. I was trying hard. They still wouldn't take me. But maybe I didn't need to see all that. I don't know that I wanted to see it. There's some scarred people in this world that are fine people that I'd jump in a foxhole with them in a second. And yet that's not what I'm talking about. They've done this as a job against it. They've done it to us, folks. They put us on a pedestal one day, and the rest of the time they destroy us. These people, Goldman Sachs, lobbyists, Trans-Pacific Partnership, the unqualified one, are the instruments to the people behind. We now have evidence. It's coming out. This is the time of the Enlightenment, folks. Again, the Renaissance. I'm asking us to use this time to our best advantage. Let's accelerate it. We have eyes to see and ears to hear now in places. We have communication lines that were never, ever known in the history of the world, the history of the memory of man as well. Unless we go back far enough and we were just communicating to each other through our minds, which may have been very possible, or how we sung. The sounds that we emanated were not guttural. They were actually songs that we communicated in frequency. We could go back to there. After that time, folks, we had what we have today, all the time it took to come here. We have the evidence of how it's supposed to work right, and we have at the same time all of how we're being colluded against, and it's being stolen back. In a world that has been told to us to be under the control of evil, can't escape you. And we're here anyway. The best a cricket is going to explain its environment is to be a cockatocracy. I don't care what other name you want to put on it. I don't care what other things the agents are that are going on. It's going to be a cockatocracy. It's going to stink to high heaven. It's going to be in the stinking abyss, and the worst excrement's going to float to the top. And thank you, Gary. I mean, at some point, I do honor the veterans, because of what they did experience. Gary L. in the RLM chat says, you didn't need to see all that. I know. But, it just hurts to know that people did see that, and worse. And for what, I guess is the point. Here we are. What? Goldman sucks? The bankers, those behind the bankers, the system, the plunder that goes on, the 2008 plan, the execution of the 2008 plan to Detroitify this country, the United States of America, that was supposed to recognize the property laws, the MERS condition that knew exactly what it was doing to take out exactly everything I was telling you about the production of the proof of evidence. And I told you I backed that up by the reading. I don't know this. I'm not that smart. I had to go read it from somebody smarter. The Mystery of Capital, Hernando de Soto, Geneva-trained economist out of Peru, says that the United States, he did the analysis, our system of records and our laws that keep those system of records as evidence and the proof of our property was what made our United States difference. And they went and used MERS to destroy those evidence records. And when I saw the MERS happen, I said they went and done what the Geneva economist had learned to do, to analyze. He analyzed for that purpose. They took down the United States of America. I'm witness to that fact, folks. It's not a question to me. And it also wasn't a surprise. It was, but it wasn't. These people are brutal, and they are very intelligent, even though they put everything on smart on us. It's intelligence on their part. We have to match that, even through our frailty. The latest Clinton wins Washington Democratic primary, talking about collusion, folks, as we go through here, talking about the fact that it's just not what we think it is. We think it's different. And the evidence is right in front of us to tell us different. Let me just get down to a little bit through. This is from the Miami Herald, I think. Washington has both a presidential primary and a caucus system. This is over Bernie Sanders winning in Vermont on the Tuesday before, and Clinton winning in Washington. And it says the Democratic, if you thought your vote meant anything, folks, this is the whole point. No, it's a franchise, it's a utility. Talk about UCC, let's get into that. Let's get into that, folks. It's a franchise, a utility on the highway for the public good. Okay, think about this. The Democratic presidential primary for Washington, they said Clinton had won. However, the results don't affect the allocation of delegates. Let me remind you, I talked about him last week, William Roberts, talking about the delegate system. And you go to these caucuses and you vote, and you think as a voter that day you went in and you think your vote means something. And I'm not talking of my support for any of these political parties. It's all a fraud before us, okay? It's a utility against you. That's fine. You can believe in it if you want. I don't. But I'm pointing out something here that you have to hear, not as a political statement, more than a factual statement of how they're taking us down, and that you don't really matter. For all of you that think you do, or even those that don't think you do, but see, I don't think a lot of you really understand the why, the substantial why behind what you think that's even more powerful than your opinion. Washington has both a presidential primary and a caucus system. Caucatocracy, folks. Wow. It even sounds the same, a caucus. What do you think is being produced from that? Anyway, but Democrats will ignore the results of Tuesday. The Democrats will be ignoring the results of the Tuesday primary, where Clinton won, having chosen to continue to use the party caucus system to allocate their national convention delegates. Sanders handily won the Democratic caucuses in March. Voters in Washington, you should be pretty upset if that's who you want. But see, you're in a system. But you should be upset. You have standing. What do you mean caucuses? You mean that you just wasted a lot of money from the Treasury to cast a vote system that was handled in March. You were supposed to attend the caucuses. You're supposed to make big caucus. That's your voice. The one voice of this political trade union. Washington's choosing to go with the caucus results. Who made that decision? But your voice was supposed to happen in March. Your vote was a waste of time and money. Is that what you veterans are fighting for? We are controlled. Folks, let me remind you, if you're not picking this up, we sued in 2013 in our lawsuit. It's an injunction. It wasn't an act. It was an injunction. Understand that. We didn't do a lawsuit. for money. We did it for stopping illegal action. I didn't want to go through having to go through a big old trial. I wanted just to stop the crime against us. Without going to money, we don't have to, it's all in equity. I don't have to worry about a lot. It still can be a lot of work if they come back correctly, but I didn't want to go through a damages case. Understand the tactics and the strategies you have to figure out on this. We sued the political parties as well as the Bar Association, as well as the governor, as well as the through an injunction collaterally through the university system, and the bar again because it's an agency of the government, and all the universities that are extending into that, and all the agencies and everything, based on their subversion of the laws of the United States regarding property disposal, which cuts to all of this. We sued the political parties. Why? You hear it right here. They're just a primary association, a legal entity, a corporation that makes a mockery of your voting, and that's legal. So, I don't care about the candidate. I'm showing you that for those of you that think you know that why you're not voting and you can talk about this other ways, it doesn't do any good. No, there's a reason behind it that you need to be attacking. William Roberts was looking at that. He figured out he thought was going to do it from the inside as a sneak attack. I don't know, actually, it sounded good to me. I don't know. I never got that tight to it. I don't know. It sounded good. But his expertise, his study, his Roberts Rules readings, his implementation never got to see the light of day. He ran out of time before he could be effectual. That's all of us, folks. They're waiting for those of us that are doing something to die. I was able to take myself, able to see what they were doing in the system. 2013 was in the district, mining district, with a bunch of other people, and we got together and we were able to out that thing and memorialize it, even if no one else understands what actually happened. It's there to be learned and seen. It's not a fiction that that's what happens and that's what we did, and we went after these political parties. I guess that's an evidence to show you William Roberts wanted to do it one way, we did it a different way to out the problem. But it had to be done. It has to be done. This is just, again, I said the Bar Association, there's others. The political parties are another. The agents of change, international agents of change inside these organizations that come out and are even criminals to their own cause are another group that you have to go after. So when I saw this notice here, I was fascinated that they would say, oh, well, Clinton won in the election, but they're going to go with the caucus votes from March. And no one says a peep, apparently, because I haven't heard. Maybe they are. Maybe Washington's pitchforked and torched to burning to the ground right now. Maybe I didn't get the whiff of the smoke. I don't know. I doubt it. Why? Because we live in a cockatocracy of crickets. So the collusion is great. There's no the honor among thieves until you can take advantage. Another report you probably heard now. Folks, I put it to Twitter, they are eating their own now, but that wasn't fully the truth, because this is all another plan. You got to be careful of the player that's not being named in all this. Saudi press, U.S. blew up World Trade Center to create war on terror. Well, it's the war of terror, folks. That's what they put on us. But now the Saudis, because of this pressure they're getting, they're now calling out. They're now going to call out what the real story is. If we can believe it, this story was supposedly out of Tel Aviv from Breitbart. And some other things that came up about Breitbart, and I've asked them, is this Zio Media? Because of last paragraphs and stories that are just out of the blue talking about this Israeli connection. And here we have this story out of Tel Aviv, of all places, that Breitbart puts the news. So I've got questions about all this. It doesn't matter to me if I ever get the answer. I'm just saying that, no, this may be exactly what we're seeing, and be careful of who's behind all this. I still have to fight local. I still have to get the law and the property reorganized. All y'all will help. We get rid of all this. It don't matter. But Saudi press is still furious over the United States Senate's unanimous vote approving a bill that allows the families of 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia. This time, the London-based Al Hayat Daily has claimed that the United States planned the attacks on the World Trade Center in order to create a global war on terror. Well, okay. Well, who else now, folks? They went and done it. Go look at the players. What I find fascinating is that you never see in this whole story anything about Britain, anything about France, anything about Israel. and yet they're pointing the finger, they're eating their own, that say the United States is a problem. Now, my other thing is, I don't understand why instead of doing all that, they didn't come out and say, well, you can't sue Saudi Arabia. We're a sovereign nation. Unless, folks, as I told you back in 2014, when the United States declared it went extrajudicial, that there were no borders it would recognize, and you see that perfectly in Syria, that maybe there is no sovereignty if you're not big enough to prove it. They can't rely on sovereign statuses. So this is also a heads up. It's also a propaganda as well. But look behind who's not discussed here, and the story comes out of Breitbart from Tel Aviv, and who's not discussed is a major player, Israel. Collusion, folks. We're being taken down. The obvious. So go, all you folks that are fighting, go fight that fight, folks. I heard lots of people got all rallied up about that. You don't attack America, and then you go and you deny the possibility that the United States did it. The United States now, the Washington, D.C., had planned to do it against the United States of America for its own designs. All of a sudden, for some reason, that becomes a non-possibility when all the evidence to the contrary faces us, and we still have people going to war and dying and going and killing innocent people over things that can't be produced. And then we hear this story that the Saudis are going to say, wait a minute, you can't sue us. You're the one that started this. We just helped you. And who's the one that's not being spoken of? That's the elephant in the room. Maybe it's a small elephant. Maybe it's a 60-mile wide elephant. But Israel. Zio West is sitting right there to tell you they done it, folks. Just like I said when I first saw the towers burning, they went and done it. When they told us they were going to do it, way back, but actually before 1987, they went and done it. There's nothing, extrajudicial is nothing under the sun that's not possible to do. You better take The Prince that Machiavelli wrote, and you better put it on steroids before you start understanding what the military complex in this world is willing to do. The propaganda is thick. We got collusion in the media. They're telling us, like I told you, this is the notice. We can do with it where we want. Who's ever capable can run and go in ahead and do what they can. I'm trying to show you there's evidence here to pry where we pry. The FOIAs are tools. You take a standing for something, stand for something, folks, or you stand for anything, I guess, but stand for something, and just ply your way with this just to see what you can uncover. What do we fight for, folks? We're not fighting for ourselves, which we should have. We're not even fighting for ourselves. Why do you think we go out and fight for wrong causes? We don't have any principles in us. It's partly why I call it behind a woodshed. It's not like I'm the one with all the principles. I'm just saying I've found some that we weren't really told, that we're ignoring or not using. And maybe people need to hear how that eventuated itself. And that's what I started the broadcast for. It actually has lots of meanings. I've thought about maybe everyone wants to hear change, and I'll change it. I'll give it another name. But this is pretty accurate what I sense about this. There's principles in us that we've lost or were never given that are there to find that we need to have in order to do right for our own self, have respect for us. Because otherwise we're going to be propagandized too, and we get our attention because we got this ADHD thing going on for some reason. We're pretty inquisitive little monkeys. We get our attention spans real short, and they make it so, and they help us to do that. Maybe I don't have such a short attention span where I have just eliminated as much as I can possibly find that's processed foods out of places that aren't supposed to be done, and I don't eat fast food joints and all that stuff. I have a pretty simple diet. Nice, simple food's great food. I don't even know why people eat some stuff that's richer and smaller and more artistic on a plate. You look at it and say, how is anybody going to survive on 3 strips of fish and this sauce that looks like a string on your plate, with a green garnish? How am I supposed to survive on that? Give me a nice thick chicken soup or stew or pot pie or whatever. Give me the rice and chicken. Give me the stuff alive. Do it homemade as best you can. I don't have a lot of the problems I hear out there. But this is what they do to us. We believe what we're told. We act by it, or we ignore it, which can be worse. I've told you over and over how that can be worse. And I told you how they're doing this stuff to put the fear of, the war of terror. on you. They put terror in every aspect on it. It's collusion at all levels. We know all that. It's time for us to step in, put our foot down, and call out parts of it that are most important to us. You don't have to do everything, because not everything, a lot of that just disappears when you start becoming principled in your life and don't accept less and respect yourself and respect others. A lot of that starts to disappear pretty quick. But I want to touch base on something else. It's an ongoing theme since 2011 in Fukushima, and blaming the world on Fukushima. Radioactive materials found in West Lake runoff area. I find it very interesting. They don't blame it on Fukushima, but they throw radioactive out there. And this had the sound of Alex Jones when he ran over to the coast to go to the Northern California to go research the Fukuzilla that attacked the beach there, remember? And guess what? This story tells you just like that one. Radioactive material has been discovered in a drainage area located in the northwest portion of the West Lake landfill. The Federal Environmental Protection Agency ordered landfill owner of Public Services and the Cotter Corporation to collect sediment samples in March in response to heavy rains that occurred in late December and early January. EPA officials have determined that the radionuclides found in one sample taken from the area are consistent with the radioactive materials found where, folks? Fukushima did it? Fukushima? Chernobyl? Where? Oh, they're from the West Lake landfill, obviously, according to the new releases sent out Thursday afternoon. Period. Oh, West Lake landfill, radioactive material must be some man-made material, right? Oh, they stopped the sentence there. More the media is involved in this deception. Let's read some more. The detected levels of thorium. Oh, the second sentence tells us it's natural rocks that are radioactive. Thorium, just like out there on the coast. Remember radium? That's a natural element as well in the rocks. So they lead with radiation. They read with radioactive material coming out of a landfill. What else could be leaching from a landfill but radioactive, what do you call it? Dirty bomb material. All this nonsense. It's just thorium, folks. A natural mineral. And it's washed out because there was lots of rains. Guess what? That's called a river system. And what they do when they transpose rock down the river into the ocean. The detected levels of thorium are low enough that they don't pose a concern to outdoor workers, the EPA said. Now, I didn't go check the nuclides. Maybe they're lying. But that makes sense to me. I told you the radiation that you check is going to be local to you. Fukushima doesn't do it. Everything. I can't see any of it that could be coming from there. And so here it is again. They lead you, and then they tell you it's just natural thorium. And Alex Jones' group went home, didn't he? We didn't hear another peep out of that, did we? University professor did the analysis spectrometer and said, oh, this is just radium and thorium. It comes out of the rock right here on the beach. But the media leads this fear terror tactic. So we got radiation. And I've told you a long time ago, they stopped the EPA. It's supposed to be helping you, and you know that's just a joke. That's an underlying joke. That's why I don't touch it too much. You know this is not, these people aren't here to help you. That's why they stopped monitoring. It wasn't to stop checking for Fukushima attacking the North America. It was because that they found out that they were going to be exposing so much radiation existing in the environment that they couldn't blame on Fukushima, that they were going to be outed for allowing it all this time. Some of which is natural. You live in a radiated world. There's some natural stuff that goes on. And so, just to point out how they keep our minds, like I said, they hack our minds, and we continue to either ignore it, don't allow it, keep spewing stuff that's really unimportant. The way we've arranged society, we take, not from the thorium, but from the radioactive side of this stuff, we are taking benefit somehow of this, and we have no energy to stop that either. We're crickets on that. If we don't like it, we have to stop it. If people that want to do petroleum want to stop petroleum, they have to come up with an alternative, and it has to be a viable one, not this made-up green stuff. Listen, I don't mind. I haven't lived underneath one. I understand it's not so cool when you got a monstrous windmill around you, or a whole herd of them. Maybe there's not so nice, but I have no problem with maybe wind power. That sounds like a neat thing. Maybe offshore. People don't like to look at them. I guess that's another problem. Woodshed. I guess it's an amenity that has no value. I don't know what the analysis will be about people, but here's the decisions we have to make living amongst ourselves. Solar cells, yeah, but what about the waste in making it? That's pretty cool. I like that. I wouldn't be no, but it's not viable when you go to industry and what we need in the world. That's no different than looking at the land disposal, saying that's how we understand to come here today with all of us, and beyond the memory of man, we come here today and we said that's how we best do it, because we best use the land if we do it this way, and we abuse the land if we don't do it this way. And so let's take stock into what worked and why. Let's find out the whys of what happened before we start condemning this whole thing, and making some observations that may lead us to the wrong conclusion. Again, we start with the wrong premise. And I'm going to, again, I got, that was 5 tabs today? Fascinating what little bit I get to, but how much I did get to. I hope you think about what I said and appreciate it and work with it. I mean, there still has to be a time now you have to think about what I said. I understand all that. But let's start putting ourselves in a better position to make better decisions. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's take the things that smart people before us understood and used, put us together for us. Let's take those better parts. Let's hold them. Let's hold them with all our life, because our lifestyle, or the way of our life, is determinant about that. These amenity type things, these fabricated fictional rights that now everyone has except for you. That's another style of affront. As I said, this genderism that's going on right now. This has been planned. They told us about all this. The underpinnings of that come from the same source that wasn't talked about within Saudi story. So that's a little more difficult to deal with. But it seems to me this genderism in a system of legal that's gender neutral. The word person has no gender, and they don't recognize gender. This genderism in legal is a fraud to begin with. But no one stepped up and said, listen, your genderism is actually encroaching and trespassing my safe space. And we all just sit here with a no statement in our face about how we're being encroached, and that the system as a question is given over to someone to find against us. And we don't say, what's occurred to me, why am I being forced, as a question, but really a rhetorical one. I don't need an answer. You don't have the right to do this, but why are you imposing your abuse on me to fulfill? See, this is walking as an accessory to the crime against you, as I find in property. Who had the right to trespass on me to impose their rule to make my space that was safe not exclusive and protected, as the government was supposed to do, notwithstanding any kind of title? The premise of gender basic properties has no place in the legal, and yet we start arguing about it, and we give it life, don't we? This is how fictions work. Some are good and some are bad. It's up to us to engage those and not deny them, and not just say, oh, they're there, and then just be quiet, because those that are utilizing it, their plan will win. It's just that simple. And they'll take out your property because they operate out of no law, just like we're told has been happened when everything went extrajudicial, and you see evidence of that trespass everywhere. That's up to us to re-maintain. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope you've heard quite a bit. Maybe the getting down the tabs wasn't so important today, but appreciate Grimner and the RealLibertyMedia.com and allowing the place for the blogcaster and the broadcast, and then the FN network. Love that. Bo Diddy and Grimner doing that. You can join that, the social network, and UCY.tv. Thank you, Jules, and letting us synchroncast out. And then again, I guess during the dailies, hearing the broadcast on Pastcast, and then again on Thursday for this broadcast, and then the terrestrial broadcasters, I thank you very much for what you do. Folks, pass the broadcast around and get people to syndicate it or simulcast. Take care. Next week, we'll see you with Tech Diffs and Nature Willing. Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
warpath feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of warpath.